I spent 100 days in Minecraft as a shapeshifter. Today, I added vanilla and custom shapeshifts to Minecraft and tried to survive 100 days, which is a very long time. My goal was to kill 3 bosses, the Adjudicator, Blackstone Golem, and the Wither. Using their drops, I can craft a shapeshifter one that lets me transform into any mob I want. Will I survive long enough to craft it? Stay tuned to find out. Here's how this is gonna work. For the first 5 days of my Minecraft world, I shapeshift every single day. But after day 5, the time between shapeshifts increases and the mobs become stronger. And we begin as a custom mob called the Red Fungus. Its abilities include growing plants at the cost of hunger, gaining hunger by standing in sunlight, and only having 2 hearts of health. Let's begin. Okay, I was kind of hoping for something stronger, but I had no time to waste. I immediately broke some wood, made a pickaxe and a shovel, and then mined enough stone for some basic tools. After checking my abilities, I noticed I can infinitely grow plants, so I collected a bunch of seeds and decided to spend some time farming wheat so I had a good food source before I started exploring. As you can see, it took quite a while to regenerate my hunger, and I was getting kind of bored. So after making 5 bread, I decided to make a boat and begin exploring. I sailed for about a minute before finding a shipwreck, which was really lucky, but this wasn't going to be easy because there was an ocean ruin filled with drowned zombies literally merged with the shipwreck. Luckily they were trapped, so I looted the food chest and found carrots and potatoes which I could farm later using my ability. I also found Frostwalker 2 boots and a water protection 3 leather helmet, which is a custom enchant used if I'm a mob that can't go in water, so it would definitely be useful later. The other chest contained a nice amount of iron, some emeralds, and 1 gold, which I was pretty happy about. I ignored the final chest since there were so many drowned and went back on land to continue farming. I knew if I found a village, I could trade carrots and potatoes for emeralds as well as have a really good food source. After a while, I crossed the river and found some new types of berries which actually gave double the hunger as sweet berries, so I collected as many as I could. I also got lucky and found some sheep in that area, so after farming some more, I crafted a bed and slept. Day 2. I woke up and I had shapeshifted into a shark. Its abilities include dealing extra damage underwater, breaking blocks at regular speed underwater, and having 20 hearts. I jumped into the ocean and remembered there was a ruins right next to me. After killing a drowned in 1 hit and celebrating, I saw a trident zombie and immediately decided to take it down. I didn't realize this at first, but it actually dropped its trident, which is insanely lucky. I then easily looted the chests inside of the ruins and managed to get some pretty decent items, including a Lore 3 fishing rod. After swimming for a while, I found an underwater ravine and decided to grab some iron for later. Then I swam past what looked like a pirate ship and found a ruined portal chest that gave me some pretty useful items. Then I continued exploring and found a random chest on the ocean floor. I opened it and realized that it was today's sponsor, Dragon City. Dragon City is a free-to-play game for all of your favorite platforms where you can collect dragons and build your own city. Collecting rarer dragons earns you more coins, and to get them, you can breed 2 together and feed them to evolve. There are also PvP modes that let you use your best dragons to fight other people, including your friends, as well as events every week, and you can even find YouTubers with their own dragons in Dragon City, like Dream, George Not Found, Mr. Beast, and many others. No silver dragon though, which would obviously be the coolest one, maybe sometime in the future. But if you haven't already, you should definitely download Dragon City using the link down below, and if you're a new player, you get a special free reward of 30,000 gold, 15,000 food, and the very rare Citadel Dragon. Huge thanks to Dragon City for sponsoring this video, and let's continue. I ended day 2 by fishing, which looked kind of cursed, not gonna lie, but all I managed to catch were regular fish, so I slept and moved to the next day. Day 3. I woke up and I had turned into a snow golem. My abilities included melting in hot biomes, taking damage from water, having a powerful snowball cannon, and moving faster on ice. Since I had Frostwalker boots, I decided to cross the ocean and run back to the nice cold taiga biome that I spawned in. Using my flint and steel and snow cannon, I killed some cows to collect leather for an enchantment table. I then came across a villager in the middle of a forest, which was really weird, but only a few blocks away, I found out where he came from. This is a custom building called a villager tower, and it contains 2 chests. One had some food and a crossbow, which is a really good weapon to use. The second chest contained a ton of emeralds, some iron, and even more food, so this was a really lucky find. Since I had so much wheat from farming earlier, I decided to make a composter and turn one of the villagers into a farmer. And after trading all of my wheat, I had 16 emeralds, which would definitely get me something good in a village. I found an iron golem next to the tower, and since I could also use some extra iron, I kind of pummeled it with snowballs. Then after searching some more, I found a jungle, but I was kind of scared to enter it since the temperature might make me melt. So I ran around and entered a plains that contained a village, which was exactly what I was looking for. While running to it, I heard a ton of zombies below me and decided to dig down. And luckily for me, it was actually a spawner, so I killed the zombies with snowballs and checked the chests, which had an insane amount of gunpowder. Afterwards, I entered the village and saw the sun setting, so I slept and woke up as a creeper. This means I can explode, eat gunpowder, and I also have 10 hearts, so this is a pretty good shapeshift. I checked if the iron golem would attack me, and surprisingly he was friendly, so I continued to explore the village, collecting hay bales and looting chests for even more emeralds. I decided to go back to the mob spawner because this shapeshift was perfect for caving. I had a bunch of health, and I could explode to kill mobs around me. And by using my second explosion, which breaks blocks, I made it down to Y11 and found a huge cave. And after a couple of seconds, I found my first vein of diamonds, which actually gave me enough to make a diamond pickaxe and an enchantment table. I also collected some redstone in case I wanted to add pistons to my house, and then found some gold, which I used to make a clock so I knew when I'd shapeshift. Lastly, I mined 4 obsidian, made a book, and crafted an enchantment table. And by looking at my clock, I could see it was nighttime, so I got into bed, and I woke up as the best shapeshift, the orangutan. My abilities include being able to swing from blocks like a monkey, only being able to sleep on top of tall trees, and having 12 hearts. And guys, before we continue any further, this video took so long to make since these mobs are custom, so if you want to see more content like this and help out the channel, you should definitely subscribe if you're in that 90% who aren't already. We just passed 1 million with only 25 videos, so thank you guys a ton. Now let's speedrun the second. So from now on, until I craft the shapeshifting wand, I change into a random mob every 5 days instead of 1. So I surfaced and headed back to the jungle where I found a temple with some iron and gold inside. I also took the arrows from the dispenser for my crossbow and then continued exploring. The jungle led to a dark oak forest, and after climbing a tree, I noticed something crazy. Not only was there a villager market, but there was also the new custom woodland mansion right in front of me. This seemed like the perfect area to build my base since I could trade with villagers and also get tons of loot from the mansion. I instantly ran over to get a closer look, and it seemed like there weren't any pillagers nearby, so I went inside and started exploring. This place looked absolutely crazy, and it was filled with different themed rooms. After turning a corner, I was attacked by a vindicator. I had barely any armor, so I had to make sure I didn't get hit. I then killed a skeleton and ran forward towards a huge staircase where I ran into an evoker. I instantly sprinted away. I found some bookshelves and started breaking them, but I got swarmed by pillagers. I got insanely low hit, but luckily after blocking up and digging through a wall, I escaped. I decided my best bet was to build a base, make better gear, and wait for a stronger shapeshift. Then I could return and actually loot this place. I found a clearing in the forest between 2 structures and decided that this cliff was a good place to build my house. So I chopped a couple stacks of logs and got to work. The last time I built a house in Minecraft was when I was 13, so just a heads up, this might not be the greatest. After completing the front of the house, I decided to collect some clay and replace the cobblestone with terracotta. I found out that I can make terracotta stairs in this mod pack too, but they kinda glitched in the replay. But as you can see, I finished the exterior of my cliffside house, and I think it was looking pretty good. I wanted to go for an underground jungle theme inside, so I placed some leaves and planned on expanding the house later. But my plans got kind of thrown into the air when I reached day 10 because I shapeshifted into another custom mob called the Summoner. This was the type of powerful combat shapeshift that I had been waiting for. Its abilities include firing an explosive wither skull, shooting a barrage of arrows, every hostile mob being friendly, and being vegetarian for some reason. I first made an adjustment to the door because I was so tall, built a fence around the front to stop mobs getting in, and made a full set of enchanted iron gear so that I was ready to raid the mansion. I went to test my new powers on nearby mobs and found a tiny orc which dropped a lead, so I put that in my chest. And without wasting any more time, my attack on the mansion begun. I went inside and looted my first chest, which had an enchanted crossbow. I didn't want to attack any pillagers until I absolutely had to, so I continued exploring passively. Then I made it back to the staircase that almost killed me when I was an orangutan. I found an evoker and decided that now was the time to strike. I picked up the totem, and after a long fight with the Vexes, I continued down the staircase. I reached the bottom and found what looked like an underground prison, and it contained some chests with some iron and gold. But after turning a corner, I found something insane. There was what looked like a pillager priest levitating in the middle of the room. So I did what anyone would do. I punched him, and there was a boss bar at the top of my screen. This boss is called the Adjudicator, and he was not going to be easy to kill. He started summoning teeth from the ground, and after I got some crits on him, he teleported away. He then summoned in a stone golem that was shooting me with a crossbow, so I decided to melee it and take it down. I got some more crits, and he teleported to the other side of the room. He then spawned in Vindicators, Vexes, and equipped an axe, attacks, and my health got shredded away in a matter of seconds. I decided to retreat and block up the exit. There were still vexes on me, so I quickly got out my shield, but as soon as I lowered it, I was attacked, and unfortunately, it activated my totem. I got some more melee hits and ran back in, but he summoned a Ravager, so I backed up and used both of my abilities. I tried bowling him, but he was immune to arrows, but eventually the Ravager despawned, so I ran back in and got some more hits. I got down to 1 heart, and knew that if I died, it would be almost impossible to get my items back. I had to go into tryhard mode. I got 2 more direct hits with my ability, fired my crossbow, and finally finished him with my sword. I then cautiously took out the vexes and was left on 1 heart with no food. I didn't realize this at first, but this is the boss that drops the key item in the Shapeshifter wand recipe, the enchanted totem. Look at this thing, dude. I released the adjudicator's pet owl, but I couldn't figure out how to tame it, so I decided to come back another time. When I went back upstairs, I made sure not to attack any more pillagers, and after exploring the upper floor of the mansion, I found some melon and gained my health back. I then left the mansion and found another evoker, so I killed that for an extra totem. I then walked to the nearby village and decided to spend a day mining hay bales and trading with villagers to get as many emeralds as possible. I planned on using these later to trade some mending books so that I could repair my trident, and also ender pearls because I could get any type of villager from the villager market near my base. In total, I got 16 emeralds, which was definitely good, and then I finished day 15 by collecting some logs and leaves so that I had enough materials to finish my house. When it became nighttime, I slept, and my shapeshift turned into a toad. This means that my abilities now include being able to leap like a frog, not taking full damage whatsoever, and having a permanent luck potion effect. While running back towards my base, I found a ruined portal that had some iron nuggets, which would be helpful towards making an anvil. I then grabbed all of the emeralds that I collected and headed towards the villager market that was near my base. Since I had a trident, I planned on trading for a mending book so that I could prepare it and use it as my main weapon. When I got there, I placed down a lectern and immediately got a multi-shot book, which was tempting, but it wasn't what I needed. I decided to spend some emeralds trading up the cleric because he could trade me ender pearls later on and buy my gold. This used almost all of my emeralds, but I could trade sticks to the Fletcher if I needed more later. I went back to my house and grabbed some gold so that I could trade it to the cleric for even more emeralds. And for anyone who doesn't know, breaking and placing the villager work blocks randomizes their trades, so I continued resetting the librarian until I eventually got a loyalty book trade, which I actually decided to do since it was only 7 emeralds. I did need a second book though, so I broke some trees and traded sticks for emeralds and then bought a second loyalty book so that I could make loyalty 3. I then traded a bunch of clay for emeralds, and a new librarian traded me a channeling book, which is a lightning enchantment for a trident, so I had to get that as well. I then spent 3 entire days breaking and placing the lectern until I eventually gave up because these villagers just wouldn't give me mending. So my plan was to try and get it through enchanting instead. I then spent day 20 expanding my base so that I had an enchanting room, sleeping area, and storage space. After that was done, I got into bed and woke up as a rootling. My abilities were the same as the red fungus, so I can use hunger to grow plants, gain hunger and sunlight, and only eat vegetables. As you guys know, the shapeshift is amazing for farming, and I only had 1 day as the red fungus, but now I have 5 days, so I decided I was going to use this time to set up a farm. This meant I could trade a ton of carrots and potatoes for emeralds. On day 21, I made a path leading up to my house to make it look nicer, then I walked to the village and collected all of the carrots and potatoes that the villagers had planted. Imagine getting your crops stolen by this thing. Then I tilled some dirt and made 2 rows of crops and used my ability to multiply them until one side was filled with potatoes and the other was filled with carrots. I eventually realized that I hadn't placed torches in my base and 3 creepers spawned inside. I had to be extremely careful fighting these guys because I didn't want them to break my house and I also didn't want to die, but I eventually managed to take them out without them exploding. A wandering trader eventually appeared, but I didn't really need anything from him, so I continued farming carrots and then went on a trip to the villager market to see if it was better to farm carrots or potatoes. And it seemed like I could earn more emeralds through carrots, so I spent 3 days farming them, and eventually I got a couple stacks of potatoes too. I also came up with a cool strategy where I made saturation mushroom stew and then used the hunger to grow crops even faster. And I'd say it went pretty successfully. I had a ton of crops and a farm set up as a food source for the future. I then traded all of my carrots and potatoes for 15 emeralds, which I would probably use later for a book, and then I went home and slept and woke up as a mob called the Soul Reaper. My abilities now include inflicting the wither effect with melee attacks, being immune to projectiles under half health, and making all crops withered and unable to grow. This shapeshift has 20 hearts and it's really good for combat, so I decided to go on a caving trip and prepared to go to the nether. I planted a potato to see what it did and it became withered and stopped growing, so I made sure not to touch any more of my crops. After running into the forest, I found a cave that looked pretty good. Then I tested my new wither ability on a creeper and dealt way more damage. When I reached Y11, I mined 10 obsidian so that I could build a nether portal by my base, and then mined a ton of iron and lapis since I didn't really need need any other ores. I eventually found an 8 vein of diamonds in a ravine, which was really good, and I was slowly getting closer to 30 levels, which I could use to make an OP pickaxe. I also found some emeralds, which was cool, and then mined some lapis, but giant bats took the drops, so I had to fight them to get it back. I didn't really mind since they were easy XP. Afterwards, I found a mine shaft where I straight away ran into a cave spider spawner, but since I was a hostile mob, they didn't attack me, so I safely broke it and killed the cave spider. I then found some more ores, including emeralds inside of the mine shaft, opened a couple of minecart chests, and one of them actually had a mending book inside. I was pretty hyped, because this saved me a ton of time trading with villagers. And this was the final book that I needed for my trident. I finished the trip by collecting some more iron and lapis, and since it was nighttime, I killed mobs on the surface until I reached 30 levels. Lastly, I slept and woke up as a piglin. Its abilities include buffing golden gear to be stronger than iron, gaining a speed boost with netherite armor, dealing more damage with crossbows, but having permanent slowness in the overworld. I then decided to try my luck with a level 30 enchantment on a pickaxe, and actually got amazing enchantments, which were Fortune 3, Unbreaking 3, and Efficiency 4. Next, I crafted an anvil and put all of the books that I'd collected onto my trident, and then enchanted a new set of iron armor and combined it with the old one since it was pretty broken. I've actually never had a mending item before, so I tested getting XP from smelting, and as I expected, my trident gained durability. I then harvested my potatoes and made a smoker so that I could bake them and give my trident even more XP. Then finally built my nether portal and entered the nether. As soon as I went through, I changed into a regular piglin, and finally my slowness was gone. Next to my portal was a soul reaper riding something called a nightmare horse, which is actually a tameable horse. I saw the soul reaper suffocating and decided to build a box so that I could suffocate it completely and take its horse. Eventually the soul reaper died, and I checked if the nightmare was tameable, and luckily it was, so I decided to come back later after I got a saddle from either a fortress or a strider. I then found a crimson forest where I had a fight with some hoglins, but luckily my fellow piglins actually helped me out. Once the area was safe, I started mining some nether gold and switching to my trident when I got the XP, and as expected, it started gaining durability very fast. After mining for a while, I eventually got my trident to full durability and switched it for my sword. This was a much more powerful weapon than my sharpness 1 iron sword and would be very useful if I found a structure. Since my pickaxe had Fortune 3, I decided to mine some gold and make a full set of gold armor. This actually gave me even more armor bars than iron, which was really good. And after running for a while, I found a bastion, and luckily it was a bridge, which has the most gold blocks. The bridge area also doesn't have piglin broods, so it makes it way safer to loot. They weren't actually hostile to me as a piglin anyway, but I knew I was approaching day 35, and I had to be careful in case I got a weak shapeshift. I collected all 16 gold blocks, then took out a baby hoglin with my trident, and then grabbed the extra gold blocks on the right. Next, I looted the single chest areas, and luckily the other side had double chests with golden carrots and some other decent loot. I then made a piglin hole and gave them a bunch of gold, and while they were trading, I used something called pie chart strats to figure out which direction the fortress was. Also, if you guys want to see me speedrun, then follow my Twitch. When I entered the chunk in this direction, a mob spawner appeared on my radar, so I knew it was this way. Then while I was waiting for the piglins, I shapeshifted into a strider, which was perfect. My abilities now include being immune to fire, walking on lava, and gaining speed on lava. I wanted to find a fortress next, and this shapeshift was perfect for navigating the nether. I then collected my piglin trades, and luckily got all 4 of the gilded blackstone shards that I needed. I also got a bunch of ender pearls as well, which was really good. Now it was time to leave the bastion, so I ladder clutched down and jumped into the lava. It was kind of weird taking full damage, but this ability was so satisfying to use. And after running across this entire lava lake, I found the fortress that I was looking for. Before I entered, I wanted to find a fellow strider with a saddle on because they have a low chance to spawn with them. This meant that I could tame a nightmare horse and take it back to the overworld with me. After running for a while, I found a ruined portal that gave me some extra obsidian, and then I found another fortress, but this one was in a soul sand valley, which was kind of dangerous. This is because the soul reapers were now hostile since I wasn't a piglin anymore. Immediately, one jumped into lava to attack me, but luckily I could move really fast, so I killed it with my trident. After running around for a bit longer, I finally found a strider with a saddle. I killed the baby piglin riding it and tried to ride it myself, which looked kind of funny. I had to get it out of the lava if I wanted to get its saddle, so this was going to be kind of hard. I pushed the strider towards the soul sand, but it kept pushing back and just wouldn't comply. But eventually I booked it in and took its saddle. I did feel kind of bad because striders are pretty wholesome, but this one annoyed me. Next I ran back to the fortress, pillared up, and luckily for me, I immediately shapeshifted into a piglin beast. My abilities are the same as the piglins, so gold armor and netherite armor is buffed. Hostile mobs are friendly, and now I have 16 hearts because the beast is beefy. First I took out some wither skeletons and headed towards a blaze spawner. I had to break a bunch of blocks since this shapeshift was so big and I couldn't fit. Then I attacked blazes with my trident and started collecting blaze rods. Luckily I was immune to fire, so I wasn't taking any damage, or at least until I saw the withered necromancer. This is a mini boss that can spawn in fortresses, and he summons wither puppets. 3 of them were already running towards me, and I took them out, but he'd summoned even more by the time I was done. I decided that I had to rush in, but the necromancer ran away when I was about to attack. I climbed the stairs and started getting some good trident attacks on the necromancer, and once I took out his puppets, I went in for the final hits. After I killed him, he dropped an aqua affinity book, which I didn't really need, but at least he was gone. I had a slight problem though. As a piglin beast, I could only eat meat, and I had none left. And I didn't really realize that when I was fighting wither skeletons, and I was left on 2.5 hearts, and after getting too close to a blaze, I was down to 1 heart. So this got quite intense. Carefully, I collected all 8 blaze rods, and on my way back to the portal, I found a nightmare horse without an owner. This actually could have been the one from when I first entered. I decided to tame it and equip it with a saddle, but on the way back to my portal, I suffocated another half a heart, but it was fine. Not even close, okay? I pushed the nightmare horse through my portal and had to make it even taller for myself so I didn't suffocate and die. Then I went through and finally killed some mobs to get some meat so that I could regenerate. I was way too big to go inside of my base in this shapeshift, so I decided to do some exploring for the final days. While riding through a birch forest, I also killed some more pigs, and just check out this aim, okay? Yeah, I'm a trident god, it's whatever. Then on top of the mountain in front of me, I saw some kind of custom structure, so I decided to take a closer look. When I reached it, I got an advancement saying something about to kill a bunny, so I was kind of nervous entering. I grabbed a water bucket from a nearby lake, and when I dropped in, I realized there were a ton of mobs. Since I was a piglin beast, they weren't hostile, so I broke the spawners and eventually found the killer bunny. It seemed to be stuck, so I picked off the mobs one by one, and they all became hostile at once. This meant I took a ton of damage, and I still didn't have any food. And after the mobs were dead, I realized I was gonna have to fight the killer bunny on 1.5 hearts. I thought this would be fine, but as you can see, this thing was fast. I did not want to get hit by it, so I pillared up and hit it over and over with my trident. This thing had so much health, it was actually crazy. But I got the final shot with my crossbow and took it out. I didn't think the loot would be this good, but it dropped 8 diamonds, some iron, and 10 emeralds. I also got 8 gold blocks from the wall, and finally broke out of the killer bunny boss room. My next goal was to get full diamond armor, and this helped towards it a ton, so I was pretty happy. After leaving, the sun was going down, so I slept and woke up as a blobfish. Yeah, this wasn't ideal. My abilities as a blobfish include breathing underwater, swimming faster underwater, every block being bouncy, but only having 1 heart. This was bad. My nightmare horse was far from my base, so I needed to bring it back, but I couldn't breathe on land. So I had to keep riding it and placing a water bucket really quickly to stay alive. Eventually I made it back though and used my lead to keep the horse by my base. I decided that I could actually use this shapeshift to go caving underwater in ravines. So I decided to just run until I found an ocean, and eventually I did. Immediately I saw a shipwreck, so I swam towards it, and inside it had a treasure map with a nearby chest. I headed towards the X because this could give me some easy diamonds and iron, and eventually I found it. The chest was completely filled with gold, iron, and diamonds, so I'd say that this was a pretty good find. I then headed down a ravine where I found some lapis, but I quickly realized that this wasn't as safe as I thought it would be. I ran into a ton of skeletons and other mobs, but luckily I could move fast and dodge their arrows and keep using my trident to attack them before they could shoot. As you can see though, this got pretty close. I almost got killed by a spider, but luckily I got it just in time. After exploring the cave, I found some diamonds, and after mining them with Fortune 3, I was all the way up to 15 diamonds. This was almost enough for my full set. I then killed a zombie and found even more, which brought me all the way up to 19. So I crafted full diamond armor and headed back up to the ocean. When I surfaced, I found another shipwreck, so I grabbed a bunch of emeralds and other materials from inside. I also found a ruined portal and grabbed 2 blocks, and then I ran into a pirate ship, which I actually decided to raid even though I was so weak. This diamond armor meant that I probably wouldn't get one-tapped, so I decided to try my luck and break in. Immediately I found some diamond ore, but skeletons and zombies poured out of the ship. I quickly took them out with my trident, and this was quite easy because I could just go below them, and then grabbed all of the treasure that was in that room, and it was a lot, but there was even more loot in the ship to be obtained. Inside of a chest, I found even more emeralds and iron, then headed to the connected room where I used water to keep all of the mobs away. I found a second treasure room with a trident, 2 emerald blocks, and a diamond block, so I took out the nearby mobs and grabbed all of the items inside. This was really good because I wanted a second trident to put Riptide on. Next, I climbed to the top of the ship, which was infested with stray skeletons, and using my water bucket and trident, I killed them all. But then my shapeshift changed into another custom mob called the Harp Seal. My abilities are the same as any other fish, but I have more health and make funny noises when I take damage. After killing the final strays and an enderman for some reason, I made it to the main treasure room, but this wasn't going to be easy to loot. All of these chests and barrels were filled with items, but there were so many spawners and powerful mobs, so I kept my distance and used my trident to clear out an area, then ran in and broke 2 spawners. I saw a witch in the back, so I sniped it with my trident and eventually pushed forward into the room with the final spawners. I broke the wall, took out the spawner, and killed the final mobs. And after looting my first chest, I found a god apple which would be amazing for fighting the upcoming bosses. I looted every chest and barrel in the ship and ended up with a ton of bread, iron, emeralds, and other materials. After I was finished looting, I exited the ship, and in the distance, I saw a floating castle. So since I was still in aquatic shapeshift, I decided to spend my time looting this as well. First of all, I took out some of the mobs waiting at the bottom, and then I kind of got impatient and just started swimming up. At the top, there was a small farm and a house, but I heard tons of zombie sounds. I went upstairs and found a spawner and some ores, but I didn't really need those. Then after breaking blocks below me, I found out the zombie sounds were coming from below. This looked like a prison, and the zombie villagers had insane gear. I checked the chest, and it didn't have much inside, so instead, I tried making a spot to break the spawner, but there were too many zombie villagers in front of me, so I pulled off a big brain play and dug through the wall to get to the spawner. Then I took the zombies out, leaving tons of chain armor behind, and this could have been kind of cool to take with me, but I had barely any inventory space. I mined all of the diamond ore inside and almost had a stack of diamonds, so I'd say this mining trip turned out pretty well. Next, I jumped off the castle, went back into the ocean, and then ran all the way back to my base. Then when I got back, I slept and woke up as a zombie villager. My abilities include being able to turn villagers into zombie villagers in one punch, being allied with hostile mobs, but having iron and stone golems attack me. So my plan for the next 5 days was simple. I wanted to get as much gear as possible and trade all of my emeralds. So firstly, I enchanted my diamond sword and got looting 3, sharpness 4, and fire aspect 2. The main good one was looting 3 since I needed to collect wither skulls and this would make it so much quicker. My next plan was to make some zombie villagers and then use potions to cure them so they'd trade with me for insanely cheap prices. To do this, I had to brew weakness potions, so I went back to the nether, got some nether wart and a couple more blaze rods, and then when I got back, I grabbed a spider eye and made a fermented spider eye. But for some reason, I made invisibility instead by putting a golden carrot on the weakness. So I headed to the villager market and rounded up the villagers, which took a very long time, then turned them all into zombie villagers, but quickly realized I had the wrong potion. So finally, I brewed splash weakness instead. Then on my way back to the villager market, I found a zombified piglin, which was really strange. A thunderstorm also started, so I finally got to use the channeling enchantment that was on my trident. Striking lightning on giant bats is actually my new favorite thing. I think the villagers respawned, so I turned these ones into zombie villagers again, and then splashed my weakness potion and used all of my gapples to make them start the healing process. For people who don't know what I'm doing, basically this is going to trick the villagers into thinking I'm really generous. Then they'll give me insanely cheap trades so that I can buy things like diamond armor and OP books for like 1 emerald. While I waited, I killed some mobs around the market, and eventually I got the advancement that showed that 1 villager had healed. And I didn't really think this through too well because the other zombie villagers just destroyed the healed villager straight away. So frantically, I tried to separate all of the zombie villagers and save the healed ones. A couple of them did die, but I managed to save an armor smith and also a couple of villagers at the bottom that turned into librarians. I went outside while I waited for the rest to turn back into villagers, and while I was there, I shapeshifted into a blaze. This means that I can finally fly, shoot fireballs, and I'm immune to fire. The main villager that I wanted to trade up was the armor smith because he can give enchanted diamond armor. So I bought a ton of iron and chain pieces from him and just threw them out. And before I used up all of my emeralds, I went outside to see if I could get a good book from a librarian. After resetting him a bunch, I eventually got a Riptide book trade, which was definitely something that I could use for the second trident that I got earlier. It did cost 26 emeralds though, which was pretty insane. With the rest of my emeralds, I decided to level up the armor smith upstairs, and look how OP this was. I could literally get enchanted diamond armor for 1 emerald. This strat was actually so OP. I bought out all of his bottom half diamond pieces and did the same with the top. And although I technically didn't need them, I could use these to repair my main armor set whenever. I could also make a separate projectile protection set when fighting a ranged boss if I decided to survive 200 days. That's a hint, by the way. When I got back to my base, I put Riptide 3 on my second trident and then stored all of my new diamond armor pieces in a chest. I wanted to make the most out of the blaze shapeshift because now was the perfect time for me to grind wither skulls. Since I could fly and I was immune to fire, it would mean that I could do it way quicker, and I wanted to craft the shapeshifter wand as soon as possible. So without waiting around, I went straight into the nether and flew over to the nearby fortress. And luckily for me, the second wither skeleton that I killed dropped its skull. The final 2 did take quite a long time though, and while I was trying to get them, I ran into another withered necromancer who gave me a way better book this time that had Unbreaking 3 and Loyalty 3 on it. I already had a Loyalty trident, but this could be used for a second one. I also found a bastion below the fortress where I found 2 ancient debris inside of chests. Since it was a Hoglin stables, I also collected a ton of gold that I could use later on. I also collected over a stack of blackstone because to summon the blackstone golem, I needed to make a huge platform. And after grinding some more, I eventually got the final 2 wither skulls. Next, I headed back to the overworld and flew as far away from my base as I could. This is because I didn't want the wither to destroy my house, so I found a nice open mountain area. Then when the sun came up, I shapeshifted into an adjudicator. Its abilities include summoning fangs from the ground, gaining random potion effects when fighting, and being aligned with pillagers. Okay, it was time. I placed down the soul sand and put the wither skulls on top, then readied my trident and placed a water bucket below me so I could charge it with Riptide. But when the wither was done charging, it started killing mobs instead of me. Respect to that bee for trying to take it out. I eventually hit a long shot with my trident on the wither, and it finally aggroed me. I placed water below me since I had Depth Strider, then used my Riptide trident to keep it nice and high in the air. Then while I was falling down, got a hit with my sword. I did this for quite a while and took out a lot of its health, but then the sky became grey, so I threw my trident and lightning struck the wither. A thunderstorm had just started, which meant that I was at an insane advantage. I used both of my tridents to deal a ton of damage, but the wither started shredding my health, so I had the idea to go to the lake and use the water to my advantage. I gaffled, then used my Riptide trident to move around really quickly. I kept launching myself into the sky so that I could keep the wither high up, and after getting in close and meleeing since I was low, I finally defeated the wither. I picked up the nether star and blackstone handle, and I was now halfway to crafting the shapeshifter wand. Afterwards, I went back to my base and repaired all of my armor because it was pretty worn down after that fight, and I decided that the best place to fight a blackstone golem would be in a nearby village. This is mainly just because it would be funny to see villagers react, but also iron golems could help me attack it. Before I went, I needed to use my stone cutter to make blackstone holder blocks where I could place the gilded blackstone fragments and summon the golem. I made it to the village, and the iron golem started chasing me immediately because technically I'm a pillager, but this was actually useful because I could round them up and then keep them where the blackstone golem would spawn. I built the podium, placed the fragments, but for some reason it wasn't working. I tried adjusting the size and it still didn't work, so I came to the conclusion that this boss could only be summoned in the nether. Next, I ran back to my portal and slept, but the next morning I woke up as the warden. My abilities now include having super strength, extra reach, only eating meat, and being slow and blind whenever my hunger is low. This shapeshift was even stronger than the adjudicator, so I was pretty happy, but it was quite hard to fit anywhere since I had to go to the forest and grab some food. Next, I entered my portal while suffocating and slowly traveled through a crimson forest looking for somewhere that seemed to be open enough. I then built the platform, placed the gilded blackstone fragments inside of their holders, and finally summoned the blackstone golem. A random piglin started attacking me, and as you can see, my strength was insane. I took a screeny with the golem as a taunt and let the fight begin. This boss dealt so much knockback and barely took any damage at all. He was also immune to tridents, so all I could do was melee and use my crossbow. I had to be really careful because I was close to the edge, so I backed up, and the golem threw a block at me, giving me mining fatigue, hunger, and blindness. After it wore off, I went in for some melee attacks, but when he went below half health, he became enraged and started throwing me even further. Luckily, my choice of location for this fight helped a ton, since he angered all of the nearby piglins and they swarmed him. I got the final hits while he was distracted and finally killed the blackstone golem. For some reason, the piglins aggroed me, so I had to run into a huge pit of them to retrieve the handle, but after gaining some distance and killing the piglins nearby, I placed a crafting table and finally crafted the legendary shapeshifter wand. I had never felt so powerful in Minecraft before. I immediately turned into a blaze and flew into the air, then turned into a brown fungus because it looked funny. Then I saw a dragon in the menu, so I used that to fire dragon's breath and take out the nearby piglins. My final goals were to beat the ender dragon and mine some netherite, and this staff just made it extremely easy. When I got back to the overworld, I finally turned back into a human just to remember what I looked like. Pretty fresh as always, and decided that my final piece of preparation for the end would be to get one netherite ingot. So I went back to the nether, dug down, and transformed into a creeper. Then I used my explosion ability to blast mine for ancient debris. I wasn't sure what item I wanted to make netherite, but I knew it would either be my chestplate or my sword. After quite a while of blasting netherrack, I eventually dug straight to some ancient debris. I already had 2 from looting the bastion earlier, so I only had to get 1 more. While looking through my shapeshifter wand menu, I found a ghost and it looked kind of cool. So I changed into it, and when I activated the ability, it teleported me to the overworld, and I was just suffocating, but I broke the stone around me and apparently could break blocks from insanely far away. When I surfaced, I found a villager tower with some basic items inside, and since I was on the surface, I could go back to the nether and not be underground anymore if I used the shapeshift again. So I went back to the nether and continued blast mining until I eventually found my 4th and 5th pieces of ancient debris. Later on, I remembered I only needed 4, but I could always use an extra one. When I was done, I changed back into a ghost, then teleported to the overworld. When I surfaced, I was in a desert biome, so I turned into a dragon and went to the nearby desert village. I checked the blacksmith and grabbed some obsidian, killed some pigs for extra food, and when I got back to the desert, I saw a giant pyramid, which I definitely wanted to check out. On top, there were 4 gold blocks, so I picked those up and then broke into the middle of the pyramid. Inside, there were 4 spawners hanging from the ceiling, so I broke those as quickly as possible so that no mobs would spawn. Took out the skeletons and then collected another 4 gold blocks. Then inside of a chest, there was a sharpness 5 book and 3 diamonds. At this point, I decided that a netherite sword would be best because getting one with sharpness 5 would be so powerful. I then just pulled the levers that said do not pull because I get easily distracted, and I kind of ignited a ton of TNT, but luckily my armor protected protected me. Next to the desert was a mesa biome, so I decided to explore that because there's a rare chance that a mesa village can spawn in this mod pack. So I flew for a couple of minutes and I eventually found one. This didn't have any villagers though, there were only villager ghosts, and this entire place was completely empty. I went inside some houses and there wasn't really anything there, but either way, this was a cool find. I also found some dirt that contained materials, so I broke it and got some iron and gold nuggets. After this, I flew all the way back to my base and stopped in the mansion on the way because I wanted to collect another banner. I decided on the pink sheep one and placed it on the front of my base. Then I put all of the ancient debris that I collected inside of a blast furnace. I also enchanted another diamond sword to try and get unbreaking, and I got knockback and unbreaking, which was fine. I combined together both the swords and my sharpness 5 book to make the godly diamond sword, then crafted my netherite ingot and made the netherite sword. Finally, I was ready to enter the end. I made sure to collect all of the items that I'd need for the dragon fight, then threw my first eye, which went in this direction, then threw the second, and the angle changed drastically, meaning the stronghold was surprisingly less than 500 blocks from my base. I flew over to the same mountains where I fought the wither and eventually located the chunk that had the staircase. Then I dug straight down and finally entered the stronghold. I switched my shapeshift to a creeper so that I could use my explosion ability to kill mobs. And while fighting mobs, I found some diamonds, which was pretty surprising. Not that I needed them, but I took them anyway. I then found some chests and took some gold from inside, and eventually found the first library, which had a water protection book and a regular protection book, which I took with me. The second library had some weird cursed books, but I took the fire aspect one just in case. Finally, I located the portal room and placed all of the eyes inside of the frame, and then changed my shapeshift to a summoner because this mob had some really strong ranged attacks. And then, when I entered the end, I saw not one, but 2 boss bars. There was something I had to fight called the Eye. I changed into a dragon and broke some crystals, and then found this boss. I immediately rushed in melee and got some really good sword hits, but when it reached half health, it teleported me away and started spawning ender eyes that followed me around. I did not want to let those things hit me, so using my flight, I avoided all of them and took it out as quickly as possible. It teleported away again, so I chased it down and got some final hits. And finally, I had defeated the Eye. It dropped an item called the Prime Eye, which I saved for when I come back to this world, and now it was time to take out the Ender Dragon. I flew to the top of a tower and started shooting the crystals. Then when the dragon perched, I turned into a blobfish and jumped down because it makes all blocks bouncy. Then I transformed into the warden so I'd have extra reach and more melee damage. When it flew away, I turned back into a summoner and fired some arrows and wither skulls. Then when it perched again, I switched to the warden and dealt even more damage this time. I used the summoner again to deal even more range damage and then decided to finish the dragon as an orangutan. This was my favorite shapeshift, so I wanted to end it in style. I got some final hits with my sword and finally killed the ender dragon. Lastly, I collected the dragon egg and also flew up to a podium that the Eye boss left and collected a second dragon egg. To finish things off, I stood next to my portal and transformed back into my first ever shapeshift, the red fungus, and then completed the game. And that is all. Hopefully you guys did enjoy watching my first time surviving 100 days in Minecraft. If you want to see more 100 days videos or a sequel to this, then leave a like down below and let me know in the comments. And again, huge thank you to Dragon City for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to claim your free 30,000 gold, 15,000 food, and the rare Citadel Dragon by clicking the link down below if you're a new player. And then when you get started, you can feed your dragons as much as you want. But be quick, because you only have 7 days from when this video is uploaded. See you guys later.